Mrs. Wessex' house was no more than 5 feet from the homes to the right and left. In the alleyway between her house and the one on the right was a jungle of bushes. As far as Gregory could tell, that side of the house had no windows. Then he saw what appeared to be a window low to the ground. Partly open, it was built into the building's foundation. Gregory guessed it led into the basement. After making sure no one was watching him, Gregory darted across the street and into the tangle of greenery. Once there, he threaded his way through the foliage to the low window and squatted down. And to his surprise, Mrs. Wessex' house was propped up by cement block pillars. Between the pillars was siding. There was no basement. What he had thought was a window was nothing more than a sheet of wood which covered a gap in the siding. Gregory touched the board. It fell over with a loud thump. Fearful of discovery, he darted to look over his shoulder. No one was coming. Feeling safe again, he peered through the gaping hole into a crawl space. Next door, someone stepped out onto the porch, slamming the front door. Fearful of discovery, Gregory dove into the crawl space beneath Mrs. Wessex' house. There he lay, face down on the dirt, breathing hard. His courage was evaporating. When no further sounds came from next door, Gregory lifted his hat and looked about. It was gloomy there, with a strong, clammy stench that almost made him throw up. Fumbling, Gregory drew out his pack of matches and lit one. The area from the ground to the house was no more than 3 feet in height. It was littered with junk, bottles, cans, clumps of matted newspapers, an old mattress, even a broken bird cage. Overhead ran crisscrossing pipes and wires, so unlike Mrs. Wessex' desk. Even as Gregory looked about, he heard footsteps above his head. Automatically, he ducked. The match went out. Gregory listened intently. He heard the sound of muffled voices, but who was speaking or what was being said, he couldn't tell. The footsteps retreated. The voices drifted away. He lifted his head. The more he looked around, the more perfect the crawl space seemed as a place to set off the bombs. All he had to do was find the right location so that stink and smoke would get into the house. His courage returned. He touched the bombs and grinned. Lit match in hand, he explored the area by crawling around. It took 3 more matches to discover something promising. A trapdoor. At least it was a square over his head with hinges on one side and a metal latch opposite. Gregory worked his way beneath the door, then lit another match and examined the latch. It was a metal short bolt. He yanked at it. Not only did it pull free, the door dropped down, smacking him hard on his head. Gregory saw stars. When he recovered, he looked about. 3 shoes had fallen to the ground. After pushing them aside, he crawled directly under the now open space. Another lit match allowed him to look up. At first, it seemed as if he were gazing up into a bundle of rags. The match went out. Gregory drew himself up on his knees, then slowly lifted his head until it was poking up through the opening. He was inside the house. The area was quite dark, save for one side where along the floor ran a strip of light. Gregory guessed he was seeing room light seeping under a door. That made him realize where he was. In a closed closet, better and better. He decided to take a chance and light one more match. The flame revealed clothing hung from wire and plastic hangers on two sides of the closet. Against another wall, all in a heap, lay shoes and slippers. On the fourth wall was a door, and there was also a plastic basket heaped with rumpled clothing. High above was shelving holding a variety of boxes. In the ceiling was an unlit bulb. Hearing nothing, Gregory pulled himself up until he was standing in the dark closet. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out the stink and smoke bombs. He made up his mind to light them, jerk the door open, heave the bombs in, then make his escape. He'd even be able to watch what happens from out front. He took out the matches. Suddenly he heard a voice from beyond the closet. "Tell you how exhausted I am. I have to lie down." It was Mrs. Wessex. "You're always complaining," said another voice. To Gregory's ears, it sounded like an older woman, but he could not be sure. "I am not complaining," Mrs. Wessex said. Gregory's first impulse was to dive back down the hole and make his escape. His second impulse was to stay and listen. He was in his teacher's closet, listening to her private stuff, irresistible. He leaned forward and put his ear to the door. "My dear," said the voice of the older woman, "I just wish you wouldn't come home from that school so tired every day." "Ma, it is exhausting, that's all. I just need to lie down." "Well, you could be thankful you have a good job. Lots of people don't have one." Suddenly, the closet door knob rattled. Panicked, Gregory flung himself to one side. The door opened. The closet seemed to explode with light. The blue dress Mrs. Wessex had worn that day came flying through the open door and fell in a heap on the floor. It was followed by a pink bra. The door slammed shut. Gregory looked at the clothes and nearly fainted. What was he doing there? He had done a terrible thing. He'd be arrested, put in jail. He lowered his feet into the trapdoor. "Ma," the voice continued from beyond. "Madge, try to remember they're just children, and you do get vacations." "Ma, I've been teaching for 15 years. I have 36 kids in my class. I get lousy pay. Each year, the kids get worse and worse, ruder and ruder. They don't want to learn. All they can talk about is sports, movies, and TV. They can't even sit still. They hate me. Sometimes I think you should have stayed married to Benny. You could have had your own kids. Do you know what happened today? Benny wasn't such a bad man, Madge. Yeah, he drank a little, but really not much. And when he was transferred, Ma, listen to me. Today I was sitting there reading. It was reading time, and someone shot a spitball right on my book." "A what?" "A spitball." "Oh, that's dreadful. Can't your principal do something?" "Ma, you don't understand." "Madge, I'm trying to understand." "You don't understand." cried Mrs. Wessex. "I knew who did it. Ryan Ergensen, the class clown. But he thrives on being the center of attention. So instead, I called up this boy, Gregory." "Why him?" "Because Gregory is the smartest one in the class. It makes the other kids resent him. But I keep thinking if I pick on him enough, the other kids will accept him. Can you grasp that? I'm afraid that if the kids turn against him, he'll want to deny his intelligence. I want to keep him smart. That's what it comes to. I'm picking on him so he'll stay smart and amount to something. It's crazy. But you know what, Ma? At the same time, I resent Gregory because he's so young and could do so much, and I can't do anything anymore." "What did he do when you blamed him?" "Gregory, he made fun of me." "How?" "He dumped his money, coins, on the floor." "Please, Madge, I wish you wouldn't cry." "Ma, do you know what it is like to have a room full of kids who hate you, despise you, have no respect for you? I hate teaching. I used to be good. I can't stand it anymore." "You've had a bad day, that's all. Or maybe you should think about getting another position." "Sure. And if I can't get one, what are we supposed to live on? Your social security?" "Go to sleep, honey. You're tired. You feel better when you're rested." There was silence. In the closet, Gregory, who had heard it all, he pressed a hand to his heart to keep it from beating so wildly. He listened and thought he detected the sounds of someone outside the closet. Was it Mrs. Wessex on her bed? He kept listening. After a while, he began to hear snores. Mrs. Wessex's snores. He started to laugh, but the laugh faded. He thought of what he had heard, and all he could feel was a heaviness in his heart. Quietly, he lowered himself the rest of the way through the trapdoor. Once in the crawl space, he looked around for the shoes that had fallen down. He put them back into the closet with care, then shut the trapdoor and latched it. When he made his way out from under the house, he ran all the way home, dumping the firecrackers in a garbage can. The next morning, Gregory was waiting at the school before they let the early arrivals into the building. He was glad none of the kids from his class were there. As soon as the doors were unlocked, he raced down the hallway toward his classroom. He reached it. Mrs. Wessex was alone in the room. She was at her desk working on papers. Gregory edged into the room. After a moment, Mrs. Wessex looked up. She began to smile, caught herself, and frowned. "Yes, Gregory?" she said rather severely. "The bell hasn't rung. What do you want?" In spite of himself, Gregory blushed. "It was about yesterday." "Yes," said Mrs. Wessex. there was pain in her eyes. Gregory wanted to put his arms around her and give her a hug. Instead, he said, "I just wanted to say, you're the best teacher in the whole world." A startled look came to Mrs. Wessex's face. For a moment, Gregory thought she was going to cry. Why do you say that?" she asked. "I just think so." He looked down at his feet. Oh, she said very softly. "Thank you." On the playground, his classmates gathered around. "Did you get your revenge?" Ryan taunted. "Yeah," Gregory replied. "Oh, cool. Well, what did you do?" "Never mind what, just see the way she acts." Gregory was right. It was almost a month before Mrs. Wessex became angry again, but not before Ryan had given him a new name, Teacher Tamer.